essential weapon in the army of dictators to ensure that they gain compliance and obedience from the people that they rule. So the question of ending torture in Uganda is effectively ending dictatorship in Uganda. Okay? So it is imperative that we think of it from that perspective. And once the dictators still in power, culture, believe it or not, is going to be on the menu. I think Comrade Harry was talking about, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so I think what would be really useful is, with our comrades here, is to open the floor as soon as possible to those of you who may have questions around torture and why torture is seen as an important tool in the arsenal of dictators, but also to get their experiences and to understand why and how we will be able to cope. Because, like it or not, if you're an activist and you're on the ground, you are going to come face to face with the long arm of the brutal dictator. And so it's really important that we understand the role of torture, the role of fear, and how that is used to entrench dictatorships. So, starting off with Comrade Lugyemli, I know you have first-hand experience of having faced the ugly belly of the dictator. It really is inspiring when we see you traveling and see you continuing to engage in activism and in supporting the cause of a free Uganda. The question I have for you is, what coping mechanisms have you learned to adopt in dealing with the brutal force of the regime? Microphone is yours.
People power, our power. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is it already evening or afternoon? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so honored to be on this panel. Thank you, David. Before I answer the question, I just want to give a little bit of history of torture in Uganda, especially around Dictator Museveni. He came into power by the means of a gun, that's in 1986, and about 50 million people were killed. And some time back, Kalido Tafile, when he was giving a speech somewhere, he gave himself away when he said that they used to go and kill people and spread propaganda that it was the opposite people were killing people. That way, trying to get support of the people. This happened in the Luwero Triangle and other areas. And when you look at the elections, we had the Chiboko squad led by Kakoza Mutare. That's the 2001 elections and 2006 elections. Then there is also an incident where Bobby was beaten up in Arua, and Museveni came out to defend the SFC, and he even made a statement that the SFC had dealt with him properly. So when you look at the environment back home, it's an abnormal environment. The regime, just like David said, uses torture as a tool to keep themselves in power. And it really works because we have come from a background where we have seen brutality. And whenever we remain passive, not to stand up for the people who go through these injustices, then we lose the ability to defend ourselves, even the people we love. So, in this kind of environment, you know at the back of your mind that, like for instance, in the campaigns of 2021, every day we would begin our trade with a prayer and ask for God's mercy to be over us. And what we faced, we had never seen it until we decided to be political. Then all brutality was unleashed on us. And we have seen it face to face. Police vehicles and military vehicles running over our people, border riders, We've seen military guys shooting direct live ammunition into the crowds, seeing our fellow comrades dying. For instance, Yasin Kauma. So the kind of environment we are in is a bloody environment where brutality is becoming normal, and when it becomes normal, people start to fear to even go out on protests. Unlike in these developed countries, the constitution will protect the people who go out to protest because it's a right. Yes, it is in our constitution that we have the right to protest, but then when you go practically and you see what happens, that is non-existent, because once you protest, they are going to shoot tear gas at you, they are going to shoot live ammunition at you. Yes, sometimes we just have to be bold and say, no matter what, we cannot accept to be passive in the kind of environment, and we just go out there and still put up a resistance, despite the fact that at the moment it seems like Dictator Museveni has the monopoly over torture, over brutality, over the gun. But still, we are not going to be passive. So with that kind of attitude, we are able to keep moving. We keep moving regardless how many fall, we keep moving. So we are able to push on. And the best way of fighting an injustice is by exposing it. So we have learned that whenever we are out there, we have the camera on us. We are able to show whatever is happening. That way, people follow and really start connecting the events that we go through, because no one is safe as long as there is an injustice anywhere. It could be your brother, it could be your cousin. So whenever we expose this, we just need more people to follow these injustices and expose it further, and stand against all these injustices. So we are able to psych up our minds and say, no, we cannot win this unless we come out to fight and face all this. Yeah.
Thank you, Julian. It's quite inspiring to hear you who's been through what you've been through, especially for the number of days that you were held in captivity. And still focusing on that experience, what kept that hope alive?
I remember when we were arrested in Kalangala. I had never been arrested, never in my life, and that was the first time. In a span of 5 days, I think I was held in 5 different detention centers. 5 just in the span of 5 days. And I remember the first time we were held in Kalangala police station. I thought that this was, it was not going to be so long, and maybe later on in the evening they would just set us free. But little did I know that we were going to spend over 7 months in prison. And so when we went through all these injustices, of course they were harsh. Even during the arrest, so many of our comrades were beaten up. There were pepper spray at. Many came out with broken limbs, broken arms, open wounds on their heads. And the fact that we knew that the world was watching kept us strong and hopeful. Because when, even after we were put in massacre, because there was demand for our release, the world was with us. And the Facebook people put out pictures claiming that some of us had been badly beaten and killed. So the regime, what they did because of the pressure on social media, they sent in their team with cameras and then took pictures of us. Those pictures are the ones they put out to bring down that demand, because people thought that we were badly, beaten. So knowing that we are not alone in this, and we have a big family out there, keeps us going.
Wow. I think it's useful to hear this from Comrade Ruby and Lee, because I know many of you spend hours on Twitter, on social media, raising the plight of the arrested comrades from Kalangala, and that just shows what impact you have by raising your voices. Honorable Derek Nyako, it seems like in Uganda, you are not too big to be arrested and tortured. Why does the government, and this includes MPs, we're talking about MPs who have been in prison for how many months now? So you said you're in Samanyana? 8 months. Why does the regime seem to have this impunity when it comes to torturing and intimidating members of the government that is in waiting?
People power, our power, NUP, everywhere. I greet you all, comrades. It is too sad that we're facing the ugly face of the dictator at such a time when the world is modern. I must say, we do not have rule of law in Uganda. I must say it is too terrible, leave alone being members of parliament. But thousands and thousands of young people are in jail today because one person has to be in power for over 40 years. Alexander, just a few weeks ago, she was raped. It is torture. As a Minister of Security, we have had confidential stories of so many of our colleagues who have been sodomized. It has reached to that extent of torture. Just like so many other foot soldiers who have been cut, beaten, brutally arrested, Masileka, a few famous ones, Kakwesa, that you get to know, the world has said them. The situation is so alarming. Torture is beyond. Just like Comrade, I have not been arrested until I decided to join the opposition. As a young Ugandan, I felt somebody had to be responsible. In 2 months after nomination, running for member of parliament, I was arrested 17 times. Just in 2 months. With a clean record, not associating any criminal record. And I must tell you, I was a Protestant for member of parliament. Not a councillor, not an LC chairperson. But their lives matter as well. I must tell you, even up to today, we have families that people have disappeared. Their fathers, their mothers are nowhere to be seen. Even in the police forces, we have police officers who were abducted and taken away just because they thought their heart was with the people. They could join the people. The situation is so alarming. Where it's going to break my heart totally, and I felt like maybe we need to take action. We have not done enough. Is an incident whereby I was taken to prison, and then when my mother came to see me, she had to be put inside as well. When we have faced torture and humiliation by the dictator, and that has happened to us, so many people tell me, Nyako, your hand was broken. That did not hurt me as much as the people we love. And I must tell you, if we do not come up, if we do not do enough, the dictator is going to keep on hurting your brothers, your sisters, not only members of parliament. Today we have Alan and Secretary inside. Our Honorable Secretary last time came out, and the whole body had marks of brutality. Somebody has to do something about this. This is the member of parliament. That even on the floor of parliament, if you address issues that are so sensitive, you will not be given a minute. We need to rebuild our country. And we can only do it if we rise up, if we stand up, if we do everything in our position to make sure that we move the dictator. Thousands and thousands of young men and women are determined. I bring you assurance from the young people interacting with, from Uganda to Africa, who can no longer take this nonsense. This torture won't stop because there are thousands and thousands of Ugandans that are saying, no, we must end this. The dictator will keep on torturing them, arresting them, brutally and framing them. The question is, what are we going to do about it? We have done something about it. You have done something about it. We need to do more about it. We do not have to give up on the way. We need to fight on. Because we are at a crucial moment whereby we need to do everything possible to end the road. We started the road. We are the hope of so many children who cannot go to school today. They are facing emotional torture because teachers cannot be paid, because taxpayers' money is being used by the dictator, probably throwing parties for his son. So we are looking at torture, and if people are going to the hospitals and cannot find medicine, they are dying the same way. People who have decided to come out openly and fight the dictatorship are dying. Thousands and thousands of people are dying presently today. Torture is in several ways. Today we have domestic violence because there is torture. People cannot live to the standards of today, and because government has no solution, we are looking at torture beyond. Torture is not only us and the foot soldiers that have been hurt. There is a reason why we are all into this struggle. To see that we rebuild the institutions of parliament, of the executive, of the judiciary. To see that the intention of democracy is practiced back home. You have been blessed that you are in the Netherlands and in the diaspora. You have seen the proper administration of government. You have seen how governments try to do everything to make sure their people benefit. I must tell you, in Uganda we are paid by torture. I must thank the food soldiers. I must thank the ladies in the market, the vendors who stand firm and say we are going to fight the dictator. Because they are the people power. Allow me as well to thank our dear president. Because if it was not for him, so many young people would not be brave enough to face the dictator. We would not be brave enough. Personally, I was in NRM. I do not see any reason why I would join the opposition before, because we do not see and we do not have a brave leader who is going to take on this. It is something else to take on a dictator. But we are determined to make sure that we overthrow the dictator.
Thank you, Honorable Neko. I'll tag on to the point about being brave. Of course, the end game of torture is to instill fear. And that fear will be fear of physical torture, psychological torture, sexual torture. But it's clear that from both your experiences, that hasn't been successful because you still stand, you still champion the cause, the call for a new Uganda, you still champion the cause for bringing down a dictatorial regime. Starting with you, how on a daily basis do you get yourself to overcome this fear? Because for some people, the fear is so great, they can't do anything about it. But you, despite the fact that you may have immunity, which we know is not existent, being an MP, as our comrades are in prison, how are you able, on a daily basis, to overcome that fear of facing the dictator?
I must say, when you look at the people who are dying in the hospitals, when you look at the injustices, when you look at the corruption, when you get a chance to know deeper what's happening in government, your only option is to be brave enough to face those fears. When you look at the situation back home, when you look at how resources are being managed, when you happen to go to the cells and interact with these young men and women, when you happen to get a relative who dies, just know you will be next. Our only option is to fight to see that we overthrow this dictator.
Thank you, Comrade Udele, I'd be interested in your thoughts on how you keep yourself above the fear that paralyzes so many activists back home and around. What is it that keeps you shouting, singing every day for a free Uganda?
Yes, the fact that I know there are people living worse situations than us. For instance, the black people in the US were able to come out and they were taken to the US as slaves. But the fact that they were able to stand up and fight for their rights, this is really inspiring. The South Africans, in the face of apartheid, were able to overcome this. So when you know that this has happened in other places, and their resilience and persistence has always led them to overcoming all these challenges, this keeps me going. This keeps me going because I know that if I don't do this, nobody's going to do this. But if I do this, I'll be able to inspire even more people to come out and do the same. That keeps me going.
And I think I couldn't agree with you more around inspiring. Your experience inspires a lot of people to take themselves and stand up. However, in whatever way you stand up. If there's anyone who has any specific questions you have or observations around the torture subject with our panelists, please don't hesitate to raise your hands, and then we'll have a microphone rotating around and you can use the opportunity to speak. We've got about 4 minutes. But I want to bring in the international perspective. I think we have 2 questions, just very, very briefly before we go to questions. The international perspective, and this is open to both of you. Why does it seem that the international community is willing to brush aside the allegations and indeed cases of torture, even carried out by the dictator's son, evidently in the case of Kakwenza? Why is it that they are willing to do this? Are Ugandan lives not worth the lives in the West? I'd just like to hear your thoughts, your reflections on that for a minute each, and then we'll move on to the floor for questions. Thank you.
This is one thing that I always keep telling my fellow Ugandans. If we don't do this, nobody's going to do it for us. For the international countries to take interest in whatever is happening in Uganda, it has to begin with us. When we say enough is enough and we come out as a nation and say no, we cannot take this anymore in big numbers, and then the regime starts killing people in big numbers, that's when, the international community will take interest. But as long as we keep passive, then nothing is going to happen. It all begins back home.
I like that. That's a really powerful response. Honorable Derek.
Personally, I think the obligation is still to us. As we request the international community to stand with us, we must rise up. We must rise up and face our fears. No finances, no armed forces can suppress the people power. At the end of the day, the people power shall be in power.
People power!
Power. So I strongly believe we are going to make it as Uganda. We are going to free ourselves. We need this help, either with the help or with no help. We are going to free Uganda.
Thank you so much, Honorable I think we had a couple of hands raised, Professor Milton, and then we'll take the other one, and then we will wrap up this session. Over to you, Professor Milton.
Thank you, comrades, for speaking about your very painful experience. We know it's very difficult, but thank you for sharing this, because this is the kind of knowledge that inspires people involved in the struggle to even become much more committed. So I just want to thank both of you for that. So, Comrade Honorable MP, you brought an issue which is not new to this perverted regime in terms of the sodomy rape. People who are not familiar with the documentary, A Brilliant Genocide, you can go to YouTube. There's a shorter version of that film. And that documentary by Ebony Butler, who is an Australian filmmaker. She interviewed men who were sodomized during the Museveni War, because that's whole conflict with Joseph Kony. That was a Museveni war. He was the one who was financing Kony in order to make him brutalize people in the northern part of the country and get US support while he was doing it. And it was surprising that Ebony was able to get some of those men to talk about how they were raped intentionally with soldiers who were infected with HIV/AIDS, spread it. So that was very valuable. But here's the problem. Culturally, it's very difficult for women to speak on being raped. Culturally, traditionally. And it's painful. For men, it's almost impossible. Right? Ebony found a few. So now, based on what you're hearing now, how pervasive is this practice, once again, being practiced by General Yoweri Museveni and the deputy editor, the deputy dictator, John Muhoozi Kainerugaba? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Milton, for that question and the connection to the brilliant genocide. Can we take one more? Is that a question, observation? Question. Okay, let's take that and then we'll get those responded to. Thank you.
Thank you to both the speakers and to you, Chair, as well. My name is Simba Mabuchu, and I'm a human rights lawyer from Zimbabwe. My question is directed to Comrade Nubian. You rightly pointed out that one way of eradicating, well, we cannot completely eradicate it, but reducing torture is to expose it. So how far have you gone in exposing torture in Uganda? What international mechanisms have you used? Because I know that using mechanisms at home is a waste of time. They won't pursue the cases against the dictatorship. But how far have you gone in using international mechanisms to expose torture in Uganda? Thank you.
Thank you. Did you say your name was Simba?
Simba Mabuchu,